Well, this is one of the great places. Gardens at Lake Merritt is one of the great places to see insects in gardens. There are many gardens that are set up here with, and when you have different types of gardens, you're going to have different types of insects. So you can see things that are in vegetable gardens. You can see things that are in native plantings. So there's a good diversity of types of insects here. But insects and plants go together. Wherever you have plants, you're going to have some kind of insect, especially if you've got natives going on, because the natives have co-evolved with those insects, and the insects can cue in on those native plants and the smells and signals they give out, so they know that there's a resource there. And that resource can be food, it can be nesting material, it can be, I know that a certain food that I like is going to be on that plant, so I'm going there. Well, the first pollinator insects evolutionarily were the beetles. They were hairy beetles, and they carried the pollen from one plant to another. But then the next really opportunistic insect was the bees. So they started off as wasps, and then you had this divergence where there became wasps that were vegetarians and wasps that were bees. And the wasps that were vegetarians evolved into the bees that we have today. But let's talk about the insects first. You have different types of flies that have hairy bodies that move from one flower to another. They're eating pollen, and pollen is important. Pollen is the economy underneath our economy. It is the transaction between flowers and insects, where this capital, which is pollen, which is a protein, which is important in the development of a lot of different insects in terms of growth and reproduction, production of number of eggs. That is the economy that's under our economy. They go from flower to flower and eat the pollen. Then you have other insects, again, the beetles, which eat pollen. And then you have non-insect pollinators, including bats. Butterflies, yeah, butterflies are kind of incidental pollinators. They're not going for the pollen, they're going for the nectar. So they're not trying to move pollen. So butterflies incidentally move pollen from one plant to another. So they're not major pollinators, but they are pollinators. Yeah. If you want to attract insects, especially aesthetically pleasing insects to your garden, there are certain plants you want to have. You want to have native plants that these insects will cue in on. They've evolved with these plants and they know that these are good for food. Other insects that are common here are the lady beetles. There are lots of different types of lady beetles here. You've got the convergent lady beetle. You've got the seven-spotted lady beetle, which is the state insect in 7 states. But dragonflies can fly for miles. They're aerial predators. They can fly up to 60 miles per hour. And they are picking off insects in the air as they're flying. So they've been around for about 350 million years. They predate the dinosaurs. Other things that I've done is invite my students at Merritt College to come down to the gardens at Lake Merritt and to observe the insects that are here. And they can see the diversity of insects that are here. Get some good photographs. Some of them are doing student projects, and so they photograph their insects, they make observations about what's here, and that becomes something that they turn in as part of their college project.
How about your first experience?
My personal experience at Lake Merritt is mainly around photography. I love, all the nature, I love the people, I love the things that you can do here. But when I come to Lake Merritt, I'm thinking about how many insect photos am I going to get today. So.
On the Fun Fence project, Jay Van Arsdale did the design work for it, and he inveigled his students to come there and volunteer their time, but these are people who love to do this work. And like I like to garden, and they like to do things out of wood, and so they did it. So there's a lot of labor in that. There's no dollar amount.
Right, so the money was basically for materials.
Absolutely,
Yes?
yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. And that was 2009 that was done?
Gee, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date.
Well, I'm taking it from your video from before.
Okay.
So if that's correct, then I'm correct. Or all the dominoes.
Basically, we're looking for the essence of the tree and trying to bring that out, even in a regular landscape situation as opposed to Japanese garden situations. It's just how we make the tree the best it can be, depending on the type of tree and so forth. Now, I started with Dennis Makishima, who had originally taken it over. Frank Ogawa, who was a council member in Oakland, asked Dennis to be in charge of the garden. And we did it for years together. That's how I learned to prune. And then when Dennis gave it up, myself and Dick Austin took over the responsibility, and we organized volunteer events here. But you can see the plant material really softens the rocks and doesn't make them look imposing once the trees have all filled in. So I imitate the Japanese model. All the Asian cultures have their own way of putting stones together, and other cultures as well, obviously, all over the world. But in the Japanese model, we're going for a natural look. And basically, we start with the largest. Well, the rocks are considered the structure of the garden, like the actual earth. And all the trees and plants are added in around it. So we try to have our rocks appear like they were bedrock or from the earth, and everything else is just added in around it. Well, we like to see the moss and lichen because it makes it look like it's been there forever. It doesn't look like they were just put in. And it makes it look like a natural scene when you see that, as opposed to quarried rock that might have sharp edges and clean surfaces. So the older rocks, and there's a place for all the different types of rocks in gardens, but in the Japanese garden, at least in the United States, we like to see these boulders with moss and lichen to appear like they've been there forever, because you're trying to create a serene environment. And if the rocks and everything else appears that it's been there forever without any kind of geological events disturbing the area or whatever, it makes for a more serene environment. And this was put in as for the suiseki people, which is the Japanese art of viewing stones. This is more of a Chinese type of viewing stone, though, than actually suiseki, the Japanese version. The Japanese version is more nature-oriented, that actually look like natural features. The Chinese like more abstract-looking forms. So, but it's a fantastic stone. And these were stones that we put in with Masi Mizumi, who was the man who taught me to do this type of work. And basically, when we built the garden, I was his foreman, and we had as many as 30 volunteers from Merritt College come and help, actually rolling these rocks in from a large pile and setting them up. So this is where we start. This was the main event. This is the first stone that was placed. This is supposed to imitate like a high waterfall with a creek running down and in through the garden. The stream are just a round river wash type of a pebble that are usually pretty available at the local stone yards. I forget which one this actually is. It looks like something that they call Tuscany, that's just a brown mixed river pebble. Yes, these were stones that I actually placed after the fact when the new paving was put in. They brought this walkway around further, so it cut into this hillside, so there needed to be some kind of retaining. So we just dropped these in to retain the hill and to kind of blend in with what we already had here. To me, I don't want it to look like this is something I did on my own. I wanted to fit in with the rest of the garden, how the garden was meant to be. So, and I think it worked pretty well like that. I teach classes at Merritt College in Oakland where there is an aesthetic pruning series. It's like one class a month, pruning pines, pruning Japanese gardens, pruning maples, pruning conifers, all the different types of trees that you would encounter. And not just in a Japanese garden setting, but in a normal urban garden setting. So it's geared to that more than the Japanese garden, actually. And those people who are involved in those classes and all become volunteers, and we use them here. Volunteer projects. I teach a class called Placing Rocks in the Landscape at Merritt. So when we have the class in the afternoon, we sometimes set rocks on campus, but several times we've come down here and placed rocks over at the bonsai garden, as well as this situation here. So not only they actually get hands-on experience, and it's very difficult to find anywhere to learn to do this kind of stuff, especially the Japanese style pruning as well as rock placement and so forth. So this has been a kind of a lab for people to actually do hands-on work.
So the Master Gardener program is a volunteer program for folks who are really interested in gardening and want to give back to their community by volunteering to help other gardeners, which is a little bit of a questionable name, because us master gardeners don't feel like we're masters at all. There's so much, we're always learning all the time, but what we do know, we like to be able to share with other people and help them out as best we can. And we have a lot of resources to offer. We have classes, and the program is run state by state, and then within each state it's usually run on a county level. So I'm an Alameda County Master Gardener. So at Lake Merritt, we have a couple of different things going on. We call it a trials garden because we do trials of different varieties of vegetables, both summer and winter vegetables, and our goal there is to be able to recommend ones that do well in this environment. So we can say to a home gardener, you know, this tomato or that pepper did well for us, you might want to try it. And we do a little handout we do. This one needs to be revised with newer information, but it describes different varieties of tomatoes, eggplant, squash, and then a few winter vegetables like spinach that we have had good luck with here, that we could say you might want to try these in your home garden. And and then we also, here at Lake Merritt, we have examples of landscape plants that we recommend. We have a pollinator garden with plants that will attract native bees and butterflies. So we have a lot of different things going on here that are educational and fit our mission or our purpose. Several ways. People come with questions when we're here, and for years here we've been having a Wednesday work day from 11 to 1 every Wednesday, and anyone is invited to stop by with questions, or sometimes they bring plants that they're having an issue with and try to get our diagnosis and our suggestions. We have classes here, workshops, classes during the summer months. Normally we have them from late spring through the fall on a monthly basis on different topics for home gardeners. And we also have a self-guided tour here. Here's a little guide that has a map of our project, and on the back it has a description of the different things going on. So a community garden it's also great for learning from other people. Because there will be someone that can teach you stuff about gardening, and you have access to them if you're in a community garden. And also it's just a great way to build community.
I teach a class called LH 501, Urban Community Gardening. And we have this corner plot, which is about 14 to 16 raised beds, which we garden, and year-round gardening, producing produce that we give to local nonprofits, food banks, and whoever really needs our food. And we've been doing that, I've been doing that since I think the late 80s. The students and passerbys mostly gain experience on the fact that you can grow crops year-round here, so that this garden is productive 24/7, 12 months of the year. And the students learn that. They learn what we can grow during what time, how does it grow, how do you harvest it. We share recipes on how you cook it. If we go back a ways, when I started this garden, it wasn't just me. It was an organization called EBUG, East Bay Urban Gardeners. And we were able to procure this corner plot which was the only plot in this garden because the rest of it was ornamentals, mostly chrysanthemums. And what I really enjoy is when novices come by and they don't know that beans grow on vines and they're purple and they're gold and they're green. So they come through and we allow them to harvest and taste them. And it's just an eye-opener for people to taste fresh organic produce that's not behind some kind of cellophane wrapper, because they don't know how it's grown. The bell peppers are a shrub, and beans could be a shrub, or they could be a vine. And my Thorbacino squash over there, I've got one that's about 4 feet long. It's just really absolutely amazing. It's just an eye-opener, and it's just so satisfying for me to sort of see that take place. So I just really enjoy it. Well, for me, the importance of having a public garden is to show people what you can grow, what is fresh. I know, as you know, there's been this whole movement of eat locally and eat fresh and eat what's in season. So this is a great way to show people what's in season. That's why those plants that we eat the fruit are primarily spring and summer plants. And when you start eating the leaves, it's mostly winter plants. Lettuces here grow year-round, which is really great. Root crops really can grow year-round. It used to be, back in the old days, I would put all the produce in the back of my truck, drive through Oakland and go to several missions and give the produce out from the back of my truck. So that's when I was much younger. So I'm really appreciative of the fact now that there's an organization that does it for me. Fresh organic produce growing 10 minutes ago.
We usually come down here where we're studying managing color in the introductory class, and so we come down here and we try to get really great pictures of autumn leaves for my fall semester students, and we come down here and we try to get great shots of cherry blossoms for my spring semester students. And the garden always provides great shots, and I'm always astounded by how when students come down here, they just get kind of lost in the rabbit hole that is this place. They have an assignment, but they basically go off and they shoot for an hour, 2 hours straight sometimes, with and they're focused the entire time because there's just so much to shoot. And when they're forced to unplug for a second and look around them, I think the lesson is embedded in that experience itself, because I think that this generation of kids experiences so much of the world through a screen that when you put them someplace where what's actually around them outcompetes what's on their screen, that's an experience in and of itself. And that's something they need to learn how to do, is to unplug and see the things that are around them, notice those details. And so I think, again, this place is so kind of just aesthetically impressive that it forces you to do that a little bit. But I do not, and I'm always amazed. For me, the big kind of aha moments and great moments as a teacher is that, like, when you assign something and a student turns in something and it's something you never even could have thought of yourself. Those are those great moments as a teacher that I think you kind of like live for. And I get that a lot when I send students out here with the cameras. It's like, I've never even seen that before. And I've been there like 70 times. Or like, wow, I really, like that was probably not the most, that thing that you took a picture of was probably not the first thing that would have caught somebody's eye, but it caught your eye, and you were able to capture it in such a way that is going to make somebody else appreciate it. But so many of these kids who, live in the vicinity of the garden, have not been here. So it's great to be able to kind of like open their eyes up to it, and they get to kind of see it through the lens of actually taking pictures. So they're slowing down. They're not taking it for granted. They're really fully appreciating what a beautiful spot it is here. So much. I think the way this place is like laid out, it's almost like you can kind of get lost in it, even though it's not that big. And I just think that's a really cool kind of a design element to this garden, is that like you feel like you're moving from one area into another, even though it's not that big of a plot of land.